was just speaking to a couple of friends of mine, Bruce and also Fred earlier, and we were talking about how it's interesting always coming to a new building. And one of the things I didn't say is I was going to tell you it's very hard trying to make an empty building sexy enough for someone to come to after work, spend an hour, sit down and listen to someone like me speak. So what we're trying to do is make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more engaging. So we have a prize to give away at the end, so no one leaves halfway through. Okay. So this quarter is it's been quite interesting for the office market. We've seen things continue their improvement. This is one of very few buildings actually finishing this year, which is why we're excited about it and happy to have you here. But for those who I haven't seen before, some new faces, it's nice to meet you. Some old faces, some friends who are just here for the food. Thank you, Mauro. It's good to see you all again. Tonight is about the tenants. So this is about giving you the information and the tools. The theme is to beat the rental cycle. It's really about making the most informed decision with as much information as possible. That's what tonight is about. And we're hosting it at one of our latest exclusive projects, which is this building here in the Sunny Tower. So before we begin, let me just give you a quick overview. We're going to give you a wrap-up of the Vietnam office market last year, an overview of what we've seen this quarter as well, how to beat the cycle, so what you need to know, the tools you need to arm yourself with when you're speaking to your landlord, and our outlook and predictions for 2014. So just some recent headlines. Unless you're living under a rock, you couldn't escape what was the McDonald's launch. I was very excited about it. I lined up. The beef is from Australia. The pork is from the US. So it's a very big deal. We're starting to see retail renaissance. Starbucks wasn't even attracting crowds that big. On the flip side, we've seen inflation down as well last year and this quarter. It's stabilised, down from 15 to 5.7%. GDP was steady in 2013 as well, and 2012 it was the lowest in 15 years. Stock market actually went up last year, and we've seen things such as smartphone sales growing sharply over the last few years. So I think we'll all agree, last year was pretty bad. Whichever sector you're in, you couldn't think it's going to get much worse. So things can only improve. And this quarter, we've started to see that positive signs. So understanding the market. Before we understand the market, allow me to give you an overview of what we've seen last year. I mean, even the most educated, intelligent president will have problems sometimes understanding the office market. I mean, even I'm left scratching my head sometimes. What one landlord says and what another says can differ a lot. But to give you an idea, these numbers here, this is net absorption over the last 4 years. So what that basically is, that's take up of office space. So you can see last year there was around 92,000 square metres of grade A being net absorption in Ho Chi Minh City. It was a significant increase on the year before, but still much lower than 2010 and 2011. So last year was a positive year. There was upwards net absorption, but again, there's still a long way to go. In terms of total supply, you can see grade A and B total supply around 920,000 square metres, almost 1 million square metres. To put things in perspective, Bangkok is around 10 million square metres. Asking rents, a tale of two cities, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, and I'll come to that a little bit later. In Ho Chi Minh City, last year and this quarter, we've seen upwards trend in rentals. So as demand has continued to increase and supply has remained tight, supply and demand affects price. So we've seen pricing increasing, both in the grade A and grade B sector. Much of this is due to the fact that there isn't that much office space. If you look out the window and you can see, well, there's probably a few buildings that have lights on them, but if you look out that skyline during the day, there's 4 buildings there that weren't there 18 months ago. And one of the things you'll see is although there's a lot of construction, there's also a lot of demand. And a lot of the absorption is taking up the vacant space in existing buildings and also the new buildings as well. So one of the things as an occupier should bear in mind, although you can see a lot of sites, empty land, buildings under construction, the reality is the office market in Ho Chi Minh City is quite tight, stable and a strong appetite. And that's why prices have been rising. As a result, office vacancy has been dropping as well. Average vacancy now is around 10% in Ho Chi Minh City. That might not mean much, but in Hanoi it's 25% of the grade A and B market. So you'll see the average rents, grade A and grade B is around $23 a square metre. To put things in perspective, this is a building where the asking rent is $24 a square metre. But if you sign the deal tomorrow, you get it for $22. That was a joke. You can laugh when you read it. But on average, grade A rents have gone up $33, and the average grade B rent, which is where the majority of the market is around $19 plus service charge, plus VAT. But there's a few details you'll see later in terms of where the demand is and where most of the tenant budgets are. So you can see, in terms of the grade A market, asking rents were stable for some time, but in the last 12 months they have been gradually increasing. And in the grade B market, they've remained stable. If we just go back one slide, which is quite interesting. At the beginning of 2011, there was almost 92,000 square metres of available grade A and grade B office space. On its own, that doesn't really mean much, but when you look at the actual available vacant space now, it's around 22,000 square metres. So you can see, compared to 3 years ago, there is a very little amount of grade A supply available right now. So I think it's fair to assume that for the tenants in the room, this is something you should bear in mind. At least for the next 12 months, I have to say it's a landlord's market. But things are going to change. There's a huge amount of supply coming online early next year, and that's going to have a major impact on prices and will also affect your strategies when it comes to lease expiry and relocation. Now, some of you in this room are probably in one of these buildings. I can already see a few of you here. But it's quite interesting, and I'll put this slide here to give you an idea of the differences in grade A office rents. So you can see there's a split between grade A buildings. There's a grade A buildings built before the year 2000, the ones built between 2000 and 2010, and the ones built after 2010. And if one of these landlords are in the room, don't shoot me, but I'm going to tell you how it is. Pre-2010 office buildings are at almost 98% occupancy. Actually, 15 years ago, a lot of the buildings that were being built with higher specification, and some of the better quality than the ones being built now. So what you found is a lot of the tenants in those buildings, like Saigon Tower, Sunla, Metropolitan, Saigon Centre, have been happy in their buildings, have grown in their buildings, and although the rents are high, they've stayed. In 2010, we had a couple of new buildings come online, which have seen mixed reviews from different tenants. Buildings like the Texco Financial Tower, Vincom Centre, AV Tower. These are the buildings which have remained at steady occupancy rates for the last year and a half to 2 years, about 70 to 80%. A lot of that is due to efficiency, some of it is due to quality. But what's been really interesting have been the new buildings that have come online in the last year and a half. So buildings like Link Tower, President Place, Empress Tower, these are buildings which would be somewhat affordable and some more efficient than these other buildings. They've been buildings which have open floor plans, buildings which have side cores, a lot like this building here, which has allowed multinational occupiers to move in and have a more efficient floor plan. So those are the three segments, and what you'll find is, if you're in this section, you're happy. If you're in the front section, you typically are happy. But it's the buildings in the middle section which a lot of occupiers have started moving away from. So what's going to be very interesting is the new supply that comes on next year and which area it actually will fall in. A lot of lines there. Some of these buildings you've probably never heard of, others you probably have. But this is occupancy. This time last year versus now. The key trend you'll see, even in the new buildings, buildings like Lim Tower, buildings like President Place, buildings like Food Plaza in District 3, these are buildings which weren't available last year. You can see already within 1 year they're at 85 to 90% occupancy. In almost every major building that we track, occupancy rates have gone up in Ho Chi Minh City in the last 12 months. With the exception of some grade B buildings, or things which just don't want to be any longer. I'm not going to mention any names. But in Hanoi, it's a very different story. How many of you have offices in Hanoi? Okay. How many of you have office lease expiries coming up in Hanoi soon? Okay. For those of you who do, you've probably got a little bit of an easier job. You've got a lot more supply, you've got falling rent, you've got increasing vacancy. And a lot of that is due to a large amount of supply coming on the market. In Hanoi, everyone with land has suddenly become a developer, from a telecommunications company to a consumer goods company to an oil company. So what you'll see is a lot more supply and a lot more availability outside the CBD or outside the core areas where people actually want to work. So this is putting pressure on prices. So grade A and grade B buildings have seen downward pressure in Hanoi and they continue to see downward pressure. And in terms of vacancy, higher vacancy rates and tenants shift and change between buildings. We expect to see this trend continue in Hanoi at least until the middle of next year, end of next year. There's a couple of big buildings coming online in Hanoi, and this will also impact further. So again, I've tried to keep it light just to give you an overview in terms of where Hanoi and where Ho Chi Minh office markets are. Both very different. If you do have an office in Hanoi, we're doing the same event in Hanoi, and I'm doing the same terrible jokes in Hanoi as well. So if you want to invite your colleagues, feel free to do so. So that's the market. Now let's talk about how you can beat the rental cycle, the information that you need to really make the right decision. And some of you here in the room, we've worked with before. I think when we deal with the landlord, there's different strategies in different ways. The most important thing is data, evidence, and comparables. So there's various ways you can beat the cycle. A motorized bicycle isn't one of them. That was another bad joke, thank you. But one of the things to take away is, if you look at where we are in terms of the rental cycle, this is the Asia Pacific rental cycle. And like everything, it's a cycle. Where we are in Ho Chi Minh City right now is we're just leaving the bottom of the cycle. So rent-to going happen. This is going to be very short-lived until the next wave of new supply comes online. In Hanoi, we're still here. We're at the same level as Hong Kong and Seoul. Rent-to-go to continue dropping. So, except rental decline slowing in Hanoi, but continuing, and rental growth acceleration in Ho Chi Minh City, at least for another 12 months. You can see it's a tale of two cities, landlords and tenants. It's a big balance towards landlords in Ho Chi Minh City, and largely balanced towards tenants in Hanoi. The only challenge you're going to have in Hanoi is finding a landlord that you can negotiate with and that will listen to you. In Hanoi, in Ho Chi Minh City, the bargaining chips are leaning towards a landlord. When we talk about the market, I think it's important to look at some of the tenant profiles, including people out here, in terms of occupiers. Tenants' budgets have remained stable. Last time we did this, it was quite similar. The average tenant size is 250 to 300 square meters. To give you an idea, this office space here, it's about 550 square meters on the net area. So the average tenant is about half this size. The average budget is around $20 to $25 per square meter, plus service charge, plus VAT. So to give you an idea, buildings like the Textile, buildings like Times Square, all the big shiny skyscrapers, that's not where the market is. In Vietnam, the market is still quite unsophisticated. Tenants don't need raised floors, they're happy screens of concrete. You don't need 3-metre ceilings, and the tenants' demand inquiries have shown that. Again, in 2013, we saw the bulk of occupiers were in the technology sector, so that's IT, retailing and manufacturing as well. So these were a lot of the tenants. I believe this year is going to change. We're seeing a lot more interest in sourcing companies. We see continued growth in pharmaceutical and also in the insurance sector as well. So Q1 this year, in the last 3 months, we've seen a larger proportion of local office tenants looking for space. This is inquiries, sourcing inquiries. So normally the split's around 80-20. In the beginning of this year, it's been about 38-62, and the bulk of tenants, the origin of the source, Japanese for the foreigners, followed by Europeans. It's funny, I was in KL last week, and every Southeast Asian country is targeting the same sectors and the same regions. Japanese investment is one of the big ones, and that's leading the front here as well. Whether it's banking, SMBC is in the room today, good to see you, or whether it's construction. A lot of the interest in terms of foreign interest aren't people like myself, white skin, beards, ex-Asian investment. In terms of actual transactions completed, that reflects more so in terms of what we've seen. 80% of the transactions completed so far this year have been foreign companies. That's companies already in Vietnam and expanding, and those coming into the market as well. And 20% have been local. An interesting part, finance, you might not think it, but banking, accounting, funds, Citibank, you're in the room there. How are you, Jonathan? That's where a lot of the demand has been at the beginning of this year, followed by the pharmaceutical sector, new setups like Eli Lilly have come in recently, and other pharmaceutical companies, followed by cosmetics. You can ask my girlfriend. And then you've got the IT sector as well. I think what we're going to see is a large growth in the insurance sector, both life and non-life, also showing strong interest. The biggest challenge is going to be availability. So budgets, you can see, almost 80% of the occupiers we dealt with this year have a budget under $20 per square metre plus. How can you in this room pay over $20 per square metre for your office? Okay, I know where your office is, so absolutely. Anyone else? Okay. Jocelyn, I apologise, we're negotiating your deal. Okay. Well, so you can see, out of the hundreds or so people in the room, we only had a small handful of you put up your hand. And that's because a large percentage of the market is still that great in budget. Buildings like this are still well received by the market. You might not think they're as sexy as buildings with a helipad, but this is what the market defines, and this is where the bulk of the market is. Affordable, efficient, operational space. In terms of location, it's no surprise, everybody wants to work in the CBRE, so the bulk of inquiries have been around District 1, and most of the transactions have been CBD or District 3. I think what we'll see next year is quite interesting. As you can see, we'll see an emergence of these centralised areas for the first time. We'll see later there's some new projects coming online in District 3, District 7, which are really going to change the market and give operators like yourselves a reason to look outside the CBD. Again, you can see most people who do move, relocate and expand. So a lot of the inquiries we deal with are expansions and relocations. The majority of people who have lease expiries will typically relocate. A small percentage will stay, and a lot of the ones who do stay are the ones who are happy in their building and are older building where they've been for a long period of time. And only around 14% of them have been new setups. Yeah, when we talk about arming yourself with tools, I think it's important to think about not just rent, but also the non-rental incentives, flexibility, and operational efficiency when you're negotiating with the landlord. A number of incentives you should consider in negotiations. It's not just about the rent. Rent-free periods, landlords are creative. They'll either give you a rent-free period up front, or 1 month every year. There's different ways they can skin the cat to make it work for you, for them. Parking, whether it's free parking or fixed parking spots, these sorts of savings These sorts of incentives you can pass on to your staff. Fit out periods, quite obvious. Fit out period, the landlord will give you on almost all leases. Rental caps and collars. I think this is very important, especially in the rising market. Some landlords will negotiate the rental cap when your lease comes up for renewal and a collar. So the cap will be a maximum percentage increase, and the collar will be a minimum or maximum decrease. Reinstatement provisions. Some landlords will allow you to leave the office space as is or renegotiate the reinstatement provision on expiry, service charges, after hours air conditioning. What's very important is flexibility. So the last 4 points, an option to renew, early termination rights, bank guarantees versus cash deposits. And that's going to be something that will eventually change in Vietnam. Landlords will always demand a cash deposit, first right of refusal. Next year, when we see an increased amount of supply coming online, you're going to have much more leverage ability to be able to play with these things. But these are things you need to consider, because it's not just about rent. It's about flexibility and operational efficiency. Again, some other things to consider when you're moving the retirement business, the length of your tenancy. You know, if you sign a 5-year lease, you typically get 1 month rent-free per year. Whereas if you sign a 3-year lease, you probably only get 3 months rent-free. Other things like your future requirements, which comes back to expansion rights, and also other operational factors like security, backup power. Service charges, another hidden cost you need to consider, including the air conditioning times as well. Reinstatement provisions, these are all things you need to think about. When you relocate, you have a fit-out cost, you have a reinstatement cost, you also have a rental cost, you have service charge costs, you have your payment terms, security costs. So a number of factors that need to be put into consideration. One thing that isn't there, that you'll find especially in new buildings now, is moving away from US dollar denominated leases. So if you're in a lease now, which is a pre-existing lease, maybe a year or 2 years old, it's probably tied to the USD, you probably have an increase every year. All the new buildings now are fixing rentals in Vietnamese dong for the telephone. So it's something you should bear in mind when you negotiate with the landlord. All rentals now are in VND, and landlords will fix them in the full first term. Again, another thing you should consider when we talk about space optimization. My colleague Charles at the back, a very handsome guy with a goatee and his sleeves rolled up. He looks after our project management department. One of the things you'll find is if you look at an efficient office space, you actually might be able to take less space more efficiently than take a larger space. So things to bear in mind is floor plate efficiency, net areas. Is it a side core like this building where you can have an open plan, or is it a central core? These are other things you need to consider when selecting buildings, rather than just the rent and the location. So we're coming towards the end, and thankfully no one's nodded off. But I think what we've seen in the last year, the last quarter, has been quite similar to what we've seen last year, and a similar story we told. The only difference is going to be Q4 this year and early next year. There's over 120,000 square metres of Grade A and Grade B office space coming online end of this year. As you saw, net absorption last year was 90,000 square metres. So that's a big chunk of office space. The bulk of it is not in the CBD. So what to expect next? So this year you can see there were a lot more office buildings finished in Hanoi than there were in Ho Chi Minh City. And the ones in Ho Chi Minh City at the left were almost 80%, 90% full with the exception of Times Square. It's been a positive year for the landlords in the room. Landlords like MB Sanical, Mr. Hong, are probably going to have another good year as well. For tenants, it's been quite challenging, but still there are opportunities. In terms of the pipeline supply, you can see the Grade A market has very few options. This year, there's one Grade A building that's meant to be finished in December. It's Vietnam, so if they say December, you know it's going to be Q1 next year, not this year. That's Vietcom Bank Tower and Mayland Square. It's a CBRE architecture building, the same architect as IFC in Hong Kong, Petronas Twin Towers and KL. So it's a purely grade A building, one of the first we've seen of its kind. You can see the grade B market. There are a few more options coming online at the end of the year, but these will probably go into 2015. So these are the buildings I mentioned. So for 2014, the buildings that they're expecting to come online, Big Tower, and this building is on Din Bin Phu. Viettel Tower is potentially going to be completed Q1. Again, 65,000 square meters, a 400 plus room hotel, retail area as well, that's in District 3. Then Combank Tower in District 1. MB Sunny Tower, where we are now. And Union Square, which is the new Vietcom. It was actually meant to be serviced apartments, but they're going to convert it into office space. The CBD buildings, which are meant to finish next year, are delayed. So the reality of Saigon Centre Phase 2, La Meridian, Saigon 1, just on the river out there, finishing next year, is unlikely. But in terms of the decentralised market, this is where the market is going to create a new area for you to consider. VSL Corporation's large complex development in District 3. Vivo City in District 7 by Maple Tree. SSG Tower in Bentan by SSG, developers of Saigon Gold and Tower Gold. And Lim Tower 2. These are buildings in District 3, District 7 and Bentan. They're all finally good quality grade B and grade A buildings, which are going to give occupiers like yourselves, or at least major occupiers, a reason to look out at saving almost half the price that you pay in District 1. For example, in District 7, you'll be able to get a grade A building for $10 to $15 per square metre, compared to $30 per square metre. So what to expect for the rest of the year, and also 2015? Pre-commitments. Now that's a word I haven't heard since I left Hong Kong 3 years ago. Pre-commitments is something we're starting to see now. This building is 35% pre-committed to the military bank. Ling Tower, the last grade A building finished, was 60% pre-committed to Techcom Bank. Vietcom Bank Tower again is pre-committed to Vietcom Bank. While a lot of them are major local banks building the buildings and committing to them, what we're starting to see is occupiers planning ahead as well. So occupiers understand at least for the next 12 months the market is tight and have a lease expiring in. I think the key point to stress is there's only 7 buildings, grade A, and 3 buildings, grade B, which can offer over 1,000 square meters of contiguous space. Of those 3 buildings, MB Sunny Tower is one. So if you're looking for a large area of space, over 1,000 square meters, your options are limited for the next 12 months. The key point to note is, although you see a lot of construction, really half of the buildings, we tracked 175 office buildings being built in districts 1 and 3. Half of them were under 3,000 square meters and were owned by state-owned organisations or self-occupied buildings. So you can see that the reality is, although there is a lot of construction, at least until the end of this year, you can expect to see rental levels continue to rise, occupancy rates continue to go along with that, and vacancy rates decline until the next wave of new supply comes online in Q1. So that's the overview of the office market. Hopefully there's a couple of views that you picked up from that. But before we go, just wanted to share with you a bit of information on the building where we are today, MB Sunny Tower. Because this is the bulk of the market. This is where the majority of office tenants are playing in the grade B $20 to $25 per square metre market. So the location, again, we're starting to see buildings on the fringe of the CBD because they're a little bit more affordable and also attractive to people rather than just expats in District 2 and District 7 local staff as well. In terms of size, again, it's not a big building, it's only 11,000 square metres. The average floor plate is 550 square metres, and already 35% of it is leased, and it's officially completed for next summer. One of the things the developers try to incorporate, and you can see, and this is a trend in new buildings, We're looking at floor-to-ceiling glass, maximum light, and also in terms of the curtain wall system, we've got 90% of the heat being reflected off. I was actually here this afternoon and I noticed it wasn't too hot for the aircon up. As a tenant, this doesn't mean too much because you have a service charge. You don't need to worry about the aircon during business hours. But again, a lot of things landlords are trying to do now is be more green, be more efficient. And you'll see that especially with the buildings that are online. Again, the ceiling height, 2.55. This is pretty average. This works on the majority of office tenants. Backup power, important. This is the standard landlord provision. So this is how you get the office space anchored over, and this is how you return it when you leave. The same with the other buildings as well. Again, you can see 22 floors, of which the bulk of it has been leased and the majority of it is available. One of the things as well you'll see, and this comes back to the efficiency area. You've got a corner, side core. So this allows open floor plate with only a couple of columns in the middle. So this will give you an idea of where the bulk of the tenants are in the market and what's actually working. You know, I've always said it's great to have buildings that are attractive, that are iconic. But the reality is, for most of you in this room, we don't need to be $30, $35 per square meter buildings unless we're a law firm or a financial institution. 60% of the market is paying $20 to $25 per square meter. The main point is, if your lease expires this year, please plan ahead. 300 square meters of office space will take you 6 to 8 weeks to fit out. It'll take another 2 months to find a location. So don't get caught in the trap. And hopefully this will help you beat the rental cycle. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Right. Before we go, and again, you can see it's very difficult making office space sexy and interesting. So we managed to convince some people to come by enticing them with a prize. And it works really well. Food is a great incentive to make people do things. So we've got 2 buffet tickets at the Nico Hotel, which I've been told has the best buffet in town. And we're going to give this away to one of the tenants in the room who is game enough. Normally we just give it away to someone who knows. But this time we're going to give it away to someone who is game enough to spell their name with their hips. Do you want me to explain that? Okay, Justin will explain it for you. Okay. If anyone is game enough to come up here, and Bruce is looking at me because I know he loves this. He's got great hips. So, visualize. Spell your name with your hips. So do I need to give the first demonstration? Okay. Say my name is Tom. And you're going to go like this, like that, an O, and an M. So, if you can come up and spell your name with your hips, don't be shy, especially for the ladies in the room. I'll even go with you if you're single. Okay? And that's open to the men as well. It's fine. I don't discriminate. So please, whoever is game enough, don't be shy. No employees are not allowed. Okay. 2 tickets. Andy? Andy? Come on. No? You don't want? This is a tough crowd. I've had auctions where I've sold people paintings they don't want. And I'm giving away a lot of credit. Ha! You have the easiest name. Come up here, please. It's very simple. Okay. This isn't going to work. Oh, Justin, okay. Good, Justin, come on. Jocelyn's still easy. Jocelyn's good because it has about 5 or 6 letters. Okay, Jocelyn. And she's ain't mine. Okay, let's round of applause for Jocelyn. Okay. So she's going to spell her name with the hips. Okay.
So I have to think first.
J. Okay. O. C. What's that? Is that E? Well, look, thank you everybody. I hope you had a good night. There's some information that you can take away. We share that presentation with you. Please don't leave. There's a lot of food and wine. And I hope to see you next quarter. Cheers.